Hello guys, it is Gate of Theories here, and recently I've been looking at the Dumping Ground and its success, and I came across what is classed according to IMDb as the Dumping Ground's best ever episode. With a rating of 9.5 out of 10, the best ever episode is apparently What Would Gus Want from Series 1, Episode 5. The highest rated episode of not only the Dumping Ground, but of the whole Tracy Beaker franchise. This episode is apparently the best episode of all of the story of Tracy Beaker Returns, the Dumping Ground, My Mum Tracy Beaker, and the Beaker Girls. No other episode has beaten its score. Now, whether you agree with that or not, and whether you think IMDb is a reliable source, especially when this is a show for young people who probably don't rate individual episodes on IMDb, it did get me intrigued to find out more about this episode and why it is apparently so great. And it turns out it also is the only ever episode of The Dumping Ground to be nominated for an award, and then is the only ever episode for The Dumping Ground to win as well. I've always liked this episode, but I've never seen it as one of my top favorites, but I thought it would be interesting to go back to it. So I rewatched it, and I'm beginning to get a sense as to why some people class this as the best ever episode. Maybe not their favorite episode, but the best episode that shows what is so great about The Dumping Ground. So let's get into it. But before we go any further, please make sure that you click that red subscribe button down below and have your notifications turned on so that you get notified every time we make any brand new Dumping Ground videos. For reference, this episode was written by award-winning writer Ellie Brewer, who was head writer for the story of Tracy Beaker Returns, and the first few series of The Dumping Ground, which is why the early Dumping Ground feels so much like Tracy Beaker compared to what it does now. I think what made this episode so great was it was so ahead of its time and feels like an episode of The Dumping Ground that uses adult themes for children's viewings, which when the show does this, I think it's excelling at its best. The story goes, Gus is finally getting fostered, but by lesbian parents, which causes controversy in the DG. Now, today, LGBTQIA+ representation still might not be great in television, but it is better than when this came out. Nowadays, in The Dumping Ground, one of the care workers is a lesbian, and we do have stories like a recent episode with Beck that discuss this theme. However, there is still complaints that the shows get because of that. They never used to do that, and for the simple reason of it just wasn't accepted. And I know there's Electra, but I'll come back to her. Now, I'm not gay myself, I don't claim to be part of the LGBTQ community, I'm just an ally, so please, if you are part of the community and want to contribute to what I'm saying, or share your thoughts about this episode, do so in the comment section down below. But I do believe this episode handles the sensitive subject and lots of other subjects very well, and bravely for its time. We've got to remember, this episode was released in 2013, which was a very different time to now. Not saying now is completely perfect, obviously not, there's still a lot of inequality in Britain and around the world, but it is better than 2013. For reference, gay marriage was only made legal in the UK in July 2013, after this episode was released. So, for a very popular mainstream kids TV show to be tackling this topic, it was almost unheard of at the time. To my knowledge and research, this was the first ever time cbbc had discussions of gay people and gay characters on their TV show. There had been plans in other TV shows but never gone through with it, such as Luke Smith from the Sarah Jane Adventures, but that was cancelled before the storyline could go through with that idea. And cbbc was very early compared to other networks. If we look at Disney Channel, for example, it took them till 2017 before a gay main character in Andy Mack, which is a lot more worldwide than cbbc. So the idea of having gay people and gay people fostering in The Dumping Ground was a very big deal for the time and a very new thing, which is one of the reasons why this episode is just so important. For me personally, I was very young when this episode came out, in the early years of first school, and I was never against gay people, it just never occurred to me. It was from this episode that I actually learned about other ways of how ordinary people live their lives, showing just how important this episode is. And what's great about the mature way The Dumping Ground tackled this was they didn't just do it the way to make certain fans happy. They didn't just make everyone be happy with lesbians fostering, or the complete opposite, everyone hating on them. Instead, they did have some characters who were on board, and some, like Johnny and Lily, who might not have seen it as necessarily normal. And this leads to some great discussions of rights, equality, and prejudice, and is really useful lessons for young people watching the show to learn. And I love how they relate it to the care system. Faith's brilliant line here just sums up this episode perfectly.
I love it. A bunch of care kids arguing about what's normal. As if we'd ever know.
Questioning what is normal, straight, gay, being in care, being fostered, race, gender, and all matters of equality, which is so important in society and just life in general. Johnny is kind of centered as the antagonist in the story, but I think it's really interesting the way it's handled, because T is the one who gets annoyed at him, and Electra begins to kind of see his side. Now, let's remember the times here. It was never confirmed that Electra was gay, it's just been highly speculated over the years. Even Mei Lee, who we know is gay now, also wasn't confirmed to be until a few years ago. There was this one very small line in 2015 that could have been interpreted differently if people didn't really like the idea of Mei Lee being gay.
It means she has accepted me and my family.
But Jessica Revel, who plays Electra, is gay, and there are pride flags hidden in Electra's room, so it is likely she is a lesbian in the show. And what I think is really cool about this is the way Electra reacts to Johnny. What she does after Johnny is kind of homophobic, she has a go with him, of course, but then empathizes with him and sees his side. Because she knows how hard life can be when people look at you differently or judge you. It might not be the same as Johnny's situation with him struggling with never being fostered and the cruelties Keith gave him, but she is there for him. She tells him he is wrong, then helps him out. And I think this is a great lesson for any young person who is watching this, who is struggling, whether that is with coming out or just dealing with people discriminating against you. And then this is of course about Gus, who does have autism. So this episode also deals with mental health and being on the spectrum, and it does that in my opinion very well as well. Again, I'm not on the spectrum, so feel free to correct me in the comments, but I think what this episode shows is the struggles autistic people can go through in care or not, and how others react to them. Because even though it's emotional for Mike, characters like Jodie outright say they find Gus very annoying because of his ways, and seeing Gus struggle to leave a system that he knows he can always rely on, and has been doing so for so long, is really hard for him, showing how autistic people struggle with big decisions like that. And looking at how Gus gets stressed out of how to organize and order his packing and unpacking is a good way to show this. Noah Morallo, who plays Gus, has even spoken out, saying, "What is so great about Tracy Beaker? It helps children understand that everyone is different," which I think just sums up this episode perfectly and shows why it is so popular and why it is so highly acclaimed. It is all about how everyone is different and learning to live and respect everyone as no one is normal. What a perfect adult mature lesson to teach young people, and I think that is the reason why this is classed as the best episode of The Dumping Ground. But anyway guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure that you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Guys, let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about this? Do you think this is the best episode of The Dumping Ground as other people say? Personally, for me, it's not my favourite episode, but I do still love it, and I do think that it is probably the best episode to show why The Dumping Ground is so great. What do you think about the way this episode tackles the themes? Do you think it was good for the time, or do you think they could have done it better? And do you think if they released this episode today, it would look any different? I definitely do think it would. But personally, for me, I really like this episode. Let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, we've been here on Gate of Theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.